I was definitely encouraged. I mean, I think that you would have favored OutCold in this, maybe not by a ton, but I think Simplicity showed it's even closer than you thought. Really, were it not for perhaps an amazing play from FrostiaK, I think we could be sitting here right now talking about how good Simplicity played and singing maniaK's praises even more than we are right now. So that's just how close it is between these two squads. And is it close enough to where Simplicity can make those adjustments in Game 2 and turn things around? We're about to find out. Let's get into those picks and bans and see if they can make some adjustments to force a Game 3.
I think that if I'm Simplicity, I'm keeping maniaKK on whatever he wants to pick.
Yes.
Let him do his thing. Yes, Dimi was really, really hard to handle on the Arthur. I think I'm probably banning that or picking it for maniaKK here, but if maniaKK says, hey, give him Arthur, I can kill him in lane with this matchup, with how well maniaKK played in that game, I think you got to listen to him. He was such a big factor.
Yeah, maniaKK played so well, you might even be able to chalk that up to just the Gaunt selection. Arthur is just that strong nowadays that even if maniaKK has a really good early to mid game the way that he did, Arthur can still be a real pain later on. So if you're maniaKK, I would certainly be encouraged. Maybe put a little bit more focus on limiting Dimi and then see what they could do with that in the late game. They don't have him to worry about as much as a Muzen and Khepri are both taken off the table. We're going to have to see something different in the jungle from FrostiaK this time.
I like the Khepri ban a lot because FrostiaK made the game-changing play there.
Yeah,
that Fire Giant
right.
play says it all to me. Get that out of his hands. Now Vamana's open, Hera open, though Simplicity kind of proved they might not want to prioritize Hera
That's right.
at this point. King Arthur is open, and that's where you're going to go, and I love it. Like I said, I think that maniaKK looked like he may have been the best player on the field through the majority of that game in Game 1. Give him, in my mind, the best character in the game right now in competitive play, which is King Arthur.
And to put that team in a really good spot with that first pick, but it does leave the door open for some strong picks in response from OutCold Gaming. Naja, remember, was banned in Game 1, so that means now the door open with the Khepri ban coming through for an aggressive support, very likely now that we've seen this Vamana locked in, who has done well in the jungle, though I believe we saw him in the solo earlier today as well.
Yeah, I think this could go either way. I think that OutCold's roster, despite having an assassin and a warrior, is still really wide open. Naja can play support, jungle, or solo.
Right.
I think that he can play all three. Vamana can feasibly play two of those. You take Khepri away from Hayzer, and I like that. I don't know about Janus, though. Like I said, DeathPanter didn't really impress me that much with this pick in Game 1, though we obviously know he's got a long history of doing well with it.
Right.
So chances are he'll have a much better performance here in Game 2.
I like the idea of taking this Khepri, like you said, from Hayzer, though. If it was picked for comfort, which I think we think that's what happened, then that's a good idea. Try and force Hayzer to show you he can play as well on something else. I think there were some small moments where maybe a res could have come out and we didn't quite see it in Game 1.
Right.
So if there's a chance you can chip away at that even a little bit more, I love that here from Simplicity. That might be the edge they need to tie this up.
And now Simplicity has the option to ban away 2 more supports. If you think that this Naja isn't going support right now, which I think it is when you look at Vamana and Kuang, I think there is a slight chance that it's going to be Naja support, Vamana jungle, Kuang solo. I think there is some room there. I think Kuang can make some plays up against King Arthur in the solo lane. But I think that core is all set. Now you're looking at mids and hunters, and that's where Simplicity has gone so far with this ban of Kernanos.
Well, it's smart to get this banned out. Remember, Xbalanque was banned back in that first phase already, along with the Muzen. I would consider those three the perennial top 3 hunters right now, at least that we've seen so far in the competitive play. So that certainly does limit the pool. I think we saw a Cupid earlier on. Maybe that's something that people are considering strong right now that could get picked up. But now we're going to have to see them go a little bit beyond the norm.
I actually think Cupid could be a really good pick here for OutCold because they've got, there's a lot of movement on the side of Simplicity that Fields of Love would really shut down pretty well. We'll have to wait and see. Rom would also be a pretty good matchup for the Cupid if that's exactly where we'll see Spudio go. Right. I don't know, but if I remember correctly, Spudio has a Cupid in the God Pool. So
I think so.
I think that's something I'd be looking at.
Bastet
especially
coming
now
through as well. Now remember, Bastet is another one that's considered very strong right now, and that you maybe aren't seeing as much of, but can certainly do a lot of damage. Pounce, man, I could probably talk all day about how much that ability hits and how much you don't want it to, and we'll get to see some of that here from Simplicity.
Yeah, I think Bastet is definitely a sleeper god right now in the jungle. I think she can do a lot. I love the mobility of Simplicity's composition. It's going to be very hard to lock any of these players down.
Yes.
But there's lots of good CC on the side of OutCold now. You've got the knockup from Vamana, which is pretty guaranteed. The Sash and ultimate from Naja. Raijin can lock you down with slows alone, let alone the ultimate. And of course, the Ullr axe. It's just going to be, can OutCold land the skill shots on such a slippery team is the big question mark for me.
I'm also wondering if this Vamana is going to be enough up against this high mobility comp. Like you said, we're about to find out, though. Can he stick onto those targets? Let's see. Game 2 about to get underway.
Thanks so much, Finch. And aggro on the desk. Into game 2 we go. Well, OutCold Gaming took game 1. But it wasn't that easy. Simplicity did put up a fight, and looking at game 2 now, Toli, I'm excited to see what these changes mean, because obviously both teams switching sides means the picks and bans have been shuffled a little bit more.
Simplicity didn't like the King Arthur that Dimi was playing in that first game, but to be fair, maniaKK had a fantastic performance on the Cerberus regardless, so that gave up an interesting pick there. The Naja, as a result of banning away the Kabrakan as well. FrostiaK now going to go for a different kind of magical god, less utility style as setup and more kind of high damage, high burst, high execution.
Hayzer, though, on the Naja, will be interested to see how this works out for him. A lot of potency on Naja at level 1, level 2, just because of the ring toss being a good wave clear and a slow. And not only that, if it hits just 2 targets, it'll pretty much destroy them. But here comes the pressure from StreakUp and Genetics now with the Khepri. They've got a nice bit of work with the Blessing, so they're going to get lane presence for now and fall back to their purple immediately. Bastet in the jungle for Faeles. How do we feel about this?
It's been a while since we saw Bastet at the highest level. I believe that the only person that really plays it is Barizial, aka Scream, for a majority. So, but I like this pick, honestly. I think she gets in and out of the action very easily. PrettyPriMe, once you're banging those taiko drums, is an easy target for the long-range third ability, for the scratches as well. And you can't Aegis during the ultimate, so if you get the damage over time now, you're going to be forcing PrettyPriMe into this position where, do I keep doing damage, or do I cancel my ultimate and get an early Aegis off?
And one of those small things that you can make use of as well is the fact that the bleed will pull FrostiaK out of his stealth. The water illusion will get cancelled out if you do take damage, so he's not going to be as invisible as he once was to try and escape and be sneaky around the back.
It's a small factor to definitely consider. I don't think that was the main reason why Faeles picks this god. I think there's just high mobility, because you're also getting extra movement speed after you use the pounds. Hayzer feeling very confident using that sash onto StreakUp despite Genetics being around the corner.
Well, that means that Faeles can get aggressive a little bit in the mid lane. They're pouncing in towards Prime to make sure he stays back. But maniaKK's in trouble against Dimi here. Did get relatively low for a moment, but luckily enough, he's got a minion wave still. Vamana versus King Arthur. I think this is a matchup we may start seeing a lot of at the start of this year.
Very possible. Dimi wants to back as soon as possible to finish off those boots, whereas maniaKK is in a comfortable position, spamming those abilities, stacking up the Warrior's Blessing, already at 5 stacks, needs 10 more, so about 100 seconds remaining until he gets those extra protections.
Definitely a Glad Shield option this time for maniaKK as his first major item, would say, the Gladiator Shield, just because he's against the physical, and, well, King Arthur makes such good use of that Gladiator Shield with his abilities.
I'd say so, but the way Dimi played it was not the case. He actually built the Tier 1 boots into the Talisman of Energy and then went for the Gladiator Shield. But in this matchup where you're against the physical and physical, you definitely want to get this item as quickly as possible. Spam those abilities with a 10% cooldown reduction. Get extra health and mana from the passive.
Nice little slash from Hayzer onto Genetics, but Genetics not really panicking there. As soon as he heard the axe, he used the Abduct to dash away, and we'll be back in range in time for most of that minion wave on the right-hand side. Just keep an eye on these two junglers, both with, well, similar game plans in mind, I'd say. Farm up to level 5 and then start looking for some picks. Bastet in the early game, pretty potent with the carries in the early game as well, being able to run down and survive such a long period of time to keep the chase going.
I think that Faeles should have an easier time in farming, and that's clearly evident by him having the extra level advantage. And looking at Dimi's build, he's always thinking about the long-term goals, sacrificing the starter's blessing to finish off the warrior Tabai first, now working on the breastplate of valor for that extra cooldown reduction. It's going to hurt him in the beginning of the laning phase, but that's something that Dimi is known for anyways. Like, whether it's picking a god that's going to be transitioning better in the later portion, or whether that's building a little bit more late game focused.
DeathPanter on the Janus once more, and PrettyPriMe go for the Raijin this time instead of the Isis. He got a lot of focus on the Isis last game, and I think that seems to be the switch up this time around to give him Raijin a little bit more survivable to an extent with that escape.
Thunder Crash is going to be important to get out of danger, especially against Faeles. Also the Mesmerize to just kind of keep other members in place. There's good offensive and defensive capabilities there. PrettyPrime's long-range damage could be enough of a just burst to allow FrostiaK to find those executes.
I'm interested where PrettyPriMe goes with his build. He's going for the boots first, but he did start off with some penetration, which we've seen timing again before. He could go for Spear, very useful on Raijin, so is Divine Ruin, but against this comp, there's not that much sustain. the reason I'm bringing that up is because we saw Book of Thoth in Game 1 from both of them, but maybe it's specific gods that you don't necessarily go the Book of Thoth.
More damage over time from PrettyPriMe on the Raijin this time around than the Isis. Now, granted, you do have 4 ticks with the Wing Gust, but Raijin's Raiju does way more than that, and especially when you have those 4 ticks from the Taiko drums. This is just an easier start by having, 650 gold for that tier 1 Spear of Magus, giving a lot of power, and it just transitions very well. Now, what I'm more surprised about is the fact that PrettyPriMe opts for Shoes of Focus as opposed to the Magi for penetration. So he's interested in more just spamming timing windows.
Well, he'll get cooldown with that, a little bit of mana too, but I guess at the same time it does allow him, well, with the penetration item he's going for early, he can cause some problems. Drum sounded, Panther has to use his space and time in response. Interesting trade between the mid laners. DeathPanter gave him a slap, and PrettyPriMe went, "You what? Let's have a fight then." And neither of them really wanted it overall.
Well, the thing was, because DeathPanter used both of his abilities on the actual god PrettyPriMe himself, you're not going to have it for the wave clear, whereas PrettyPriMe can line up his abilities to do both.
Fight over this blue buff on the right-hand side at the moment. FrostiaK gets hit by Excalibur as maniaKK was doing a good job of slowing him down. Genetics and Hayzer both turn up to the fray as well to make sure that this isn't too much of a one-sided affair, but the blue buff at the moment, the pit, is controlled by Simplicity. But Hayzer's still here, and he's going to land the ultimate on to Arthur.
Yeah, but what follow-up? Dimi has no mana. FrostiaK finally coming back in, but it's PrettyPriMe that needs to be the follow-up. He doesn't have Taiko drums. He needs to find some sort of damage. Genetics forced to escape away. FrostiaK forced to use that ultimate defensively to survive against maniaKK.
The pull was good from Panther, just enough time to get away for Genetics to survive. And what an interesting fray where so many people got very low. All the ultimates pretty much expended there. At the end of the day, nobody ended up falling down.
maniaKK zoning away FrostiaK for as long as he can was the deciding factor, because there was so much damage that Dimi was dealing with PrettyPriMe rather to find some of those kills, but maniaKK zoning away 1, and then Genetics was the primary target, surprisingly enough, for a majority of that. And as a Khepri player, that's what you really want.
Yeah, I will say the one interesting thing about that fight is it felt like OutCold Gaming felt very confident in it, knowing that they'd have PrettyPriMe there a little bit earlier than Janus, especially when they know DeathPanter's ultimate isn't available. It was the right sort of window to try and make a play on defense around their blue. End of the day, though, it didn't really come to much. Goal difference still negligible.
7 minutes in, still a tied game, essentially. Both of the supports making their way in the solo lane is interesting to see at this stage when buffs are usually contested over the left-hand side instead. But that's just kind of how this game has developed, where sometimes you need that kind of a pressure. And when both the ultimates from the mid laners was traded out in mid lane, it had DeathPanter have through space and time, had PrettyPriMe had Taiko drums, we definitely would have seen a first blood there.
Yeah, a couple of deaths for sure. I do like the fact that PrettyPriMe did pick up the Aegis at the start of the game too. Didn't mention that, but sometimes, you know, there's not that much hard CC that's going to cause you a problem, but there's plenty of poke and extra damage that can. So the Aegis start for PrettyPriMe here, going to allow him to maybe absorb some of the dot damage that Faeles could put out and still survive to live to fight another day. This blue buff on the right-hand side, however, is spawning yet again, and both junglers are very much interested in contesting for it.
The only real CC you need to worry about is Genetics root into Abduct. So if you do get out of position to get rooted, and you don't have time to use Thunder Crash, well, you're going to use Taiko drums. And then you have to worry about maniaKK, but as long as you can see him in the soul lane, you're not worried about his CC either. So I think that's a great pickup for PrettyPriMe.
Dimi will get his own blue buff thanks to the help of FrostiaK there. maniaKK and Faeles just couldn't do enough. So the time was a little bit exhausted there, but in the mid lane now, pressure onto DeathPanter as Hayzer was making a rotation too. He has just stepped to the ward, Hayzer, though, as he keeps the pressure going, but in the duel lane, look at StreakUp!
StreakUp?
Nice little play from Spudio.
He kind of just dashed forward.
Misplay? That's pretty much what it was? Yeah.
That was definitely, like, he got hit by the axe, he got hit by the full combo, and he still dashed forward. And then I think he just didn't have enough mana to use his ultimate, or he had enough but thought he was dead anyway, so he might as well save it.
Hayzer fighting against Genetics at the moment. Genetics misses with the Abduct, and straight away Hayzer will take the man to the sky that is Faeles, but a good ultimate from Genetics keeps him alive as Panther picks up Hayzer with the unstable Vortex. The aggression from OutCold Gaming will get them a red buff, but it will cost them a life.
Genetics really showing Hayzer how to play the Khepri in this instance, saving out the life of Faeles at the last possible moment, and despite missing the abduct, he made up for it with that ultimate. Hayzer getting a little too ambitious, was expecting the follow-up damage from PrettyPriMe to be enough, which it was, and honestly, in Hayzer's shoes, I would trade my life as well if I can guarantee the life of a jungler, but having Genetics there waiting underneath makes that a little more difficult.
It was indeed, and now Hayzer with a quick trip back to base will be working towards sovereignty. Meanwhile, Genetics more than likely going for the Onis or the Genjis, which we've seen a little bit more in the supports in the early stages, especially when you've got, you know, the Raijin and the Kuang to deal with. Makes sense to go for some magical defense earlier on.
I think Hayzer did that actually in the last game as well. He built into the Genji's guard. I like this item on both Soul Laners and Guardians. So much MP5, I believe 40 MP5, 10% cooldown reduction. It's a great item to pick up, especially when you're the primary peel asset for your team.
It's interesting how the support role has changed over time. It used to be, you just get these auras, and it's in this order you get the auras, Sarv into Amulet, maybe a Thebes here and there, but nowadays, it's a little bit more focused on what your opponents are. Is it double magical? Is there a couple more heavy magical gods I'm going to deal with earlier on? Well, in that case, I want some magical defense over a sovereignty before going for that.
It just depends on who's diving your backline as well. Like, is that 20 protection aura really going to be the make it or break it case, as opposed to maybe an extra 9 seconds off of my Scarab's blessing?
Spudio now with the Transcendence at 11 stacks. StreakUp working towards that Devourer's Gauntlet's being finished. But there's a lot of pressure in the jungle from OutCold as both Faeles and Genetics under pressure. And Faeles will fall down. The team couldn't get in range. Genetics actually got zoned from that fight. Right. So he couldn't get his ultimate there to help out.
All things working out for OutCold Gaming. They're putting one member on the left and another member just too far south. Unfortunately for Hayzer last game, he ran into that same situation where he just couldn't be in position.
This is on DeathPanter to try and steal this potentially, but oh, look at that. Respect from OutCold Gaming.
They know. I think they saw him travel with that Sentry Ward.
They didn't want to risk it, did they? They clearly just didn't want to do the coin flip. It felt like they were the most, confident one to take it down, but instead, they back away respectfully and instead invade the red buff and keep the pressure in the lanes.
That through space and time is going to outburst any damage that OutCold Gaming is going to have, especially if you're not entirely sure what angle that ability is coming from. You might actually be getting hit from it at the same time.
Yeah, I think Panther played that right by going around the back, though, to try and create a different sort of angle to be coming in from. But well played from OutCold Gaming to notice that. Genetics going to head back to base, though, continuing finishing off some of those items. As in the mid lane, Panther looks like he's going for the Soul Gem next in his build after the Book of Thoth.
Very popular on the Januses. It never really fell out of favor, I think, because you can proc it through the portals, proc it through the threshold, and an extra cooldown reduction has never hurt a Janus at the end of the day.
I'm okay with even going for this here as well, because normally you'd be like, why has it not gone Pentoli? But if you look at the roster OutCold Gaming have here, there's not much magical defense, there's not much tankiness that he has to deal with for the time being, so he can forego going for the pen just now.
StreakUp forced to use that ultimate defensively, and he's going to have to back to base. OutCold Gaming could try to force another fight with the Golf here, but keep in mind that Dimi is not present, and maniaKK is.
Funny enough, that might have been the reason why they didn't force the Golf Fury the first time around. Space and Time did find a home, but it wasn't in time because Prime was in the air. Now Prime gets to turn this around, and Hayzer's there to make sure Panther gets slapped around. On landing, the drums hit, but so did Spudio with those axes, and he's causing problems for maniaKK. There was Dimi knocks him up. maniaKK will escape, but Faeles is low. Still looking for a fight with Frosty.
Genetics still having his ultimate, but FrostiaK is going to fall. Faeles creating a lot of havoc. He's forced to go on the north-hand side. He probably could have pounced south to receive the ultimate from Genetics, but I think he's still fine unless Spudio can find him around the corner.
Oh, maniaKK getting a lot of damage up onto Hayzer, and Hayzer could go down here and will to do a slice from maniaKK, but now Spudio gets a bit of free time with this warrior, and he's not tanky enough. Genetics, however, was in the perfect position to revive him, and the peel after the fact is okay too.
Look at Spudio wrapping around underneath. I thought for a second he was going to wrap behind that tier 1, tier 2 tower, but instead stripping away the red buff, and it could be StreakUp in a little bit of trouble on the left-hand side with Spudio's rotation.
So just the Gold View is still standing at the moment. The gold lead has really come from just consistent fighting. Spudio looks for a fight with StreakUp again. No beads available, but no axe available for the time being. The damage is so potent, however. And Spudio really wants the kill, but he tanks a couple more tower shots than he needs to. And now DeathPanter could be in trouble because I don't think he realized Prime was here.
No, not quite yet. The ultimate not available,
Rama,
but he doesn't even need it. StreakUp from a distance takes out Spudio, so at least it's a 1-for-1.
Man, that was just Hunter and a mid laner left in their own in the duo lane, and fireworks began. Panther was a casualty. Spudio was too. Spudio's hung around too long, and Panther got punished for it too. FrostiaK realizing how difficult it is to deal with a Bastet, because Bastet causes so many problems, but the escape is good just in time before Genetics could find that route.
FrostiaK holding his abilities for as long as he did. I like the patience there, but then missing both of those abilities came back to haunt him. Now he's forced to back prematurely, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of action in this duel lane. PrettyPriMe even recognizing it. Genetics needs to find the route.
Yeah, and he will do so. Actually forces the ult from Prime in response there. Nice little use of the ult. Notice Prime could have used his beads, but chose to change his man and go for his ult instead to keep those beads available.
That's right. It's just a shorter cooldown on his ultimate, especially with those shoes of focus. You got the evolved Mage's Blessing for an additional 10%. So great mindset. I'm not sure if that even would have been a kill, whether or not he used the ultimate. StreakUp doesn't have the ultimate for the follow-up, and the root duration, I'm not sure which ability Genetics is maxing out. Probably it's the Rising Dawn right now, so it's only level 1 root, maybe 2, so it's only about a 1.25 seconds.
Yeah, it's going to be on the root that he is maxing. Because the funny thing is Khepri does pretty well. You always want to max the 2 first, but the Solar Flare and the Abduct, both of those have scaling in terms of length of time for the pull duration, which means the silence is longer, or the root duration. And some situations, well, require one or the other. OutCold Gaming yet again, that's all I seem to say, is invade the red buff and not successful.
Something small that they can at least capitalize off of by giving it to either PrettyPriMe or Spudio, but this time it's Hayzer that picks up the red buff, the tank nausea. It's sometimes better to just give it to somebody than nobody, considering that going into that cove is a safety hazard.
Oh, Spudio got baited a little bit there by StreakUp, but Genetics didn't find the Abduct. We'll find the route after the fact. TP coming in the background at the same time, however, out of Dimi. A little bit worried about the aggression, as now StreakUp looking for the play! He can't find the last snipe, but he did get his Aegis, however. Spudio didn't need to use it, and now Dimi's here for the beatdown! The umbrella is going to slap away in the back of his head, and a nice escape from Genetics, but Prime is over the wall!
Still going for it. PrettyPriMe not going to use the ultimate. It was available to him. Genetics already used the Abduct. Could have found some of the pulls off of the taiko drums, but instead going to save it for a rainy day with his Gold Fury, and even being spotted as DeathPanter at the red buff.
Yeah, Panther was busy trying to proxy farm a wave, did so, but he didn't realize Spudio was from base, and the collapse back from the left-hand lane will now be punished. DeathPanter falls, and the Gold Fury is started.
They knew exactly where he was. Those pings coming on through. It's up to maniaKK to defend this Gold Fury. He blinks on in, but the focus is on him.
But he's in the sky, and that means the Gold Fury will be reset for now. maniaKK juggled in the air as Dimi takes a lot of damage from the kiddies, and Faeles, meanwhile, got juggled by Hayzer, but FrostiaK has already executed Arthur, and Faeles is on the run. Jukes out the dunk from FrostiaK, but he can't get away from Prime. And in goes Hayzer once again to make sure Genetics can't get involved with this Gold Fury.
Clean 3 for nothing. OutCold Gaming really putting on the hurt. Getting the first Gold Fury around the same timing as this first game, that 16.5 minute mark. Really starting to stretch their lead to 4,000 gold.
It's really funny because I was about to say, I think DeathPanter's play of proxy in Tier 1, Tier 2 was a really good idea because he couldn't really get involved in the fight and left. It was already over. But then, not necessarily greed, it's kind of a situation of like, well, I go for the red buff because it's there and it's available, but I didn't realize that people were coming to my rotation, that people were still not in left lane. He just hung around too much and it punished him even heavier.
It was the same story to the first time that he got kind of aggressive around that red buff, where he wasn't really taking advantage of the first time, so he thought he was in the safe and the clear by going for it for the second time. But when you don't have vision around those mid-harpies, you're just asking for a bad time. You just have to assume that if you're going somewhere where you don't have vision, assume that the enemy team does have vision, assume that they know where you're going, and just expect them to make the best possible play against you. Now, if you do have a sentry ward, then that play becomes a lot more calculating, a lot safer to do.
Tier 1 tower on the left does go down, which means that OutCold Gaming have a bit of an advantage on the map for the time being too. They're already over the Pyromancer, however. FrostiaK working away on it with PrettyPriMe, but maniaKK and Genetics have sniffed this out. maniaKK's tanky enough to weather some of this storm, but he's going to be a little bit careful of the burst that can come out of FrostiaK and PrettyPriMe.
Most of that damage coming through PrettyPriMe. That 30% of his health stripped away. Another 40% of that health, and FrostiaK is going to be very interested in finding a snack.
And Prime, to be fair, he's just after trying to stack up the Shaman's Ring if he can. Hayzer catches maniaKK with the ultimate on landing. The drums are there, but maniaKK's still fine for now. Genetics trying to get the ult off if he needs it. The portal came through pretty big as Frosty's looking for the execute. Remember, that will go through the Khepri ultimate itself, but that leaves Genetics all alone, and he's snapped up by FrostiaK, as OutCold Gaming could turn their attention back towards the Pyro.
maniaKK just able to get off the back in time before FrostiaK lands into that tier 2 tower. And with StreakUp all the way on the left-hand side of the map, I'm surprised OutCold Gaming don't outright go for the Fire Giant.
Yeah, there's nothing else really to threaten them too much, I guess, when you look at the squad, the simplicity you had. Obviously, Janus, space and time could cause problems, but that was on cooldown.
Oh, wow.
And the Rama snipes too.
They would rather defend the tier 2 tower, thinking that StreakUp was going to commit to it. It was like a little bit of a mind game where OutCold Gaming could have went for Fire Giant. Knowing this, knowing that simplicity was not going to stop them, they thought that the guaranteed play from StreakUp was to commit to the tier 2 tower. So cutting their losses, OutCold Gaming would rather stop the tier 2 tower and find a kill than maybe go back for Fire Giant. It was like this weird, like 5-10 moves seen in the future that just didn't work out for them.
I will say though that like Fire Giant has been a bit of a bait trap this season just because of the changes to it. It does a lot more damage, a little bit more survivable. And Simplicity trying to make a play on this here, baiting a couple of characters, see if they can get a cheeky window. They won't find one. Instead, they'll find a big baby. And Genetics won't like this. With haste and katana, Dimi's not going to give up chasing. He needs a portal and gets one from Panther as maniaKK around the back. But Hayzer comes in with a big ultimate, the right sort of time for his team to set up and bring down Faeles before Faeles can even do anything.
Genetics' ultimate wasn't available. He's going to get taken out through the wall. FrostiaK finds maniaKK as well. Hayzer not done yet. Trying to get one. StreakUp falls down. Only DeathPanter left alive on the left-hand side of the map. Fire Giant for the pickings now from OutCold.
Yeah, they can't do the tier 2, however, because you know what? The tier 1's still standing, but they, like you said, they can head towards the Fire Giant now. Panther's ultimate is available, and OutCold Gaming should be semi-aware that it could be up and have to be available to make sure they don't accidentally get it stolen away unless Panther's going to go for a cheeky play.
It's looking for it. They have the vision.
Here we go.
It's
too late. Too late. I like the idea of the timing. He just doesn't know how much burst they're going to have, unfortunately. OutCold get the Fire Giant. They're also going to get a tier 1 on the right-hand side thanks to PrettyPriMe split push there. And it's 12-4. And it's actually looking totally OutCold Gaming made 2-0 Simplicity on week 1.
It looks that way. That first game took a while because both teams were just a little bit, not hesitant or scared or anything like that, but methodical about every step that they wanted to take moving forward. But now I just think OutCold Gaming is outplaying Simplicity at this point. Genetics had a good showing on this Khepri, I think, in the earlier stages, but it's just not enough to save the life of Faeles. Like, he has 3 deaths. maniaKK getting a little bit too ambitious at times and not staying in the background, whereas Dimi can't be contained once he transforms.
It's Vamana, right? Like that's what Vamana does. He runs at you and causes you problems, and he's doing for me, it's Dimi and Spudio that are the ones really stepping up this game specifically. Spudio's had a great game so far on this Ullr, but Dimi's been causing so many problems to keep them on the run. It's allowed Spudio to get that much player damage.
The thing is, I'm not in love with OutCold Gaming's composition because of how high execution it needs to be to work. This could have easily fallen on its head if OutCold Gaming didn't get the kind of lead that they had in the mid game by getting that Gold Fury and forcing some of these fights. It could have all went downhill.
Panther's trying to split push and getting punished heavily. That was a really good call from FrostiaK actually to guess which direction Panther was going to go to. Obviously, it's a little bit telegraphed if he's going to head to a wall, but hey, nice little illusion for the extra damage. Panther slips the net for now. Hayzer! He won't find it.
He was thinking about it. He had the blink available. Ultimate was there as well, but Janus covers too much distance.
But he's going to whack away at the tier 2 tower in mid with the Fire Giant round his waist. It won't take too long. Genetics caught in a bit of no man's land and gets blocked with the abduct, and straight after the fact, Hayzer will take him up and down. Not enough damage to kill just yet, but the taunts will cause Genetics to at least use his ultimate, pop him in the spot. And the follow-up damage is not there.
Oh, there it goes.
Is over the wall.
FrostiaK finds it. Now it's a 5-on-4. Fire Giant still available around everyone's waist. OutCold Gaming thinking about how they want to approach this now because Vamana doesn't have ultimate. So who's going to tank it? PrettyPriMe looking for the shots over the wall. A little bit of a sentry ward battle between that middle and right side Phoenix.
Yeah, with Khepri being down, there's a little bit of a lacking front line for Simplicity to stand there and hold the line. So he's allowing FrostiaK to get in and remove Faeles. In response, FrostiaK will also get maniaKK, who dropped below threshold just in time for the execute, and into the base he goes looking for a triple onto StreakUp, but the Aegis saves the day. It won't save the Phoenix.
I don't think it'll save the Titan either if they want to go for it. 35 seconds on maniaKK, 30 onto Faeles, but no. OutCold Gaming going to play it very safe. Go for the right side Phoenix, which is guaranteed.
They're already minions for this, but Hayzer will find the sash on Genetics, and Spudio actually beads away from the portal there, a little bit concerned.
He jumped into it.
About the death. He did, but it was a nicely one from Panther. Phoenix goes down, 2 Phoenixes down, and into the jungle go OutCold to heal up before looking to end the game.
Better play it safe than sorry without the... Well, I guess Dimi's ultimate is now available, but a little too far away.
Totally. That's just experience from OutCold more than anything else. They've played in so many games where they've seen near throws and mistakes by trying to end too early. Why not just take it, take it slow?
They probably also had a lot of gold in hand after that fight, after getting all those towers and now even the Phoenixes. So might as well go ahead and spend it. Get all 6 completed items to get the guaranteed victory and call it an easy day in the office.
Definitely seen some different builds in the Kuang as the days progressed as well. We saw some Bancrofts and some Typhon's Fang earlier on for Kuang. This time around though, Frosty still has the Bancrofts, but heading for the rings a little bit more so, which we've seen the rise of this season with some couple of adjustments to them in terms of power and cost.
The Height of Urchin is the more surprising item pickup there. Going for a defensive option for FrostiaK is never a bad thing on an Kuang because you have enough base damage, I think, on some of your abilities where as long as you have the Bancrofts and the Shoes of Magi, you can just do the Dirty Bubble build after the fact and go for all defensive items if you really wanted to. You can rely on the damage from PrettyPriMe to get other members into that execute threshold. You just have to make sure that once you're in as an Kuang that you don't die. So that's why Height of Urchin, you got Mantle of Discord, Spirit Orb. These are 3 items that you're really looking for to survive if you engage as an assassin.
Final tier 2 tower for simplicity goes down on the left-hand side. And OutCold Gaming actually going to wait around for the next Fire Giant, it looks like, before looking to end this game out. Just 1 Phoenix standing for simplicity at the moment. They do have Unstable Vortex and Through Space and Time, and those 2 abilities on their own can really make an impact in a team fight if you can find the primary targets. And he needed to come up big at this point, totally, with how this game is looking.
It's very true. DeathPanter trying to do whatever he can with these Through Space and Time. So it's a little bit mistimed at that Fire Giant, but the team fights need to be cleaner because even if DeathPanter does hit the ultimate, if he's the only one left alive, it doesn't matter if he steals the Fire Giant. He's still going to eventually lose the game. So I think it's going to come down to more of how can Faeles isolate PrettyPriMe. And this is where Bastet kind of starts falling off. When you're behind like this as a Bastet player, you can't even get into the action to create any sort of disruption.
I mean, the only player that's actually even at the moment in terms of experience for simplicity is, well, actually DeathPanter in the mid lane, who's done a lot of proxying. There's the Space and Time fight, but I think that's too early to make an impact. FrostiaK was then. It was actually just off the mark, unfortunately enough. Not the easiest ability in the world to do blind, but now that's on cooldown, it makes life a lot easier for OutCold Gaming to secure their, I believe, their 3rd Fire Giant with it.
So the thing was, I think he wanted to clear the wave and hit the Fire Giant. I think that you're better safe than sorry by just aiming at the Fire Giant or even a little bit to the left of the Fire Giant, knowing if you can hit any sort of Hunter or Mage and get an accidental kill is a great look on what you really want to do as a Janus. Because at this point, for simplicity, they need that kind of random haymaker to get themselves back in this game, or at least delay it for the moment.
And that's why we're always looking at the Janus to make that impact. Maybe StreakUp could come up big with some of those snipes if someone escapes low. But in comes OutCold Gaming now for their final Phoenix of Game 2. Can they take it down here? Or will Simplicity put up the defense they need to and not allow that to happen?
I mean, they do have a couple of fire minions that they're going to have to eventually defend on the right side. It's going to come down to the patience factor from OutCold Gaming. If they're going to force the issue on the left-hand side or just kind of casually do this 4-1 split.
And it looks like it will be the 4-1 split. FrostiaK going to walk up, bring these fire minions in towards the Phoenix. Faeles doing his best to slow down this aggression. FrostiaK will take a time to bring down the Phoenix, but not enough time to cause too many problems. Meanwhile, the rest of his team have been working on the Phoenix, and Faeles has already picked up StreakUp. And on landing, he'll have to roll away to safety. Phoenix is down, all 3 dead. Right one's about to spawn, however, and it looks like that's where OutCold Gaming are headed.
Look how much damage maniaKK took from the Raijin Percussive Storm combination. Not a good look if you're a King Arthur there, because how are you supposed to engage on this late game team fight? All 3 Phoenixes are down now. The Titan at the most vulnerable form. OutCold Gaming looking for the 2-0 sweep.
Slowly OutCold just looking for an angle, looking for a sash on the right side of target. Hayzer will use the ring toss onto the Titan to try and bounce that around a little bit. Janus forced to abduct defensively. Minions next coming down from mid, then the right hand side. Won't take too long to be picked, but it's all OutCold waiting for the right window.
Dimi's about to go in. He's going to use that ultimate here momentarily to tank up the Titan, and it's just going to melt.
Yep. Big Baby's there, drums through the wall, and that's game 2. OutCold Gaming defeat Simplicity in week 1. in fairness, it was a really good set overall to watch. It's two teams that are trying to work out the meta, work out their new teams for the year, and see where they stood. Overall, OutCold.
And interesting picks. Interesting picks, I would say. Isis in game number 1, Raijin in game number 2. PrettyPriMe had a fantastic performance in this game too. Faeles playing the Bastet, didn't really work out for him. High execution composition from OutCold Gaming, and they played it perfectly.
Beautiful set, beautiful end to EU SML today. I'm excited to see the rest of the league perform now of exactly where they're going to stand. What about you guys at home? What about you guys on the desk? Do you think these are the sort of teams we're expecting to see? Is OutCold the best?
They certainly appear to be, Hindu, after a strong performance there. Finch and Aggro going to break down that last set that we just got through seeing. And OutCold, I think now, after beating Simplicity, and in the second game, not so much up for debate, I would say. I think they're looking like just the best team down here now.
As we expected. This is kind of what we expected to see out of OutCold. This is how you draw it up. Dimi has a great game in solo. Prime looks like one of the best players in the world again in mid lane. And for me, I'm looking at Spudio and how well he played.
He played real well this
game. That Ullr was really good. And he, soloed StreakUp in lane, was consistently dealing damage. And as we kind of highlighted during picks and bans, this is a hard composition to execute as against Ullr because there's so much mobility. And you have a lot of skill shots you have to land as Ullr, but didn't really phase Spudio whatsoever. He played lights out this game.
And that's the thing with Spudio, man. He's been in some tough situations. Brought into the middle of the year last year in Season 5 into a tough job, and I think he rose to that job, and he's doing so again here now on an OutCold roster where he's around some really big names, right? I mean, Prime, Emilito once he returns, Dimi as well, and he's standing right there with him and looking impressive, being a reason why a team this stacked is winning games. I'm loving what we're seeing from him so far.
I mean, there was a lot of hype around this dude last year, and he played well during his short time in the SPL with Mouse. It just didn't end up working out long term. But I think that Spudio is a really strong player, and we'll see him continue to grow. FrostiaK looked great again in Game 2.
Absolutely.
His kind of ascension from what he used to be as an SPL player to now what he was at the beginning of last year, at the end of last year with Mouse, at the beginning of this year with OutCold. FrostiaK he's an animal right now. Really strong player.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Hayzer was able to step in as well and sort of fill these shoes. They are big shoes to fill when you're trying to step in for Emilito. Letting me know he really is just in this team in the sub position, though, just coming in to help out for Emilito since he's not able to be there for him right now. And I think he did his job for this team. It didn't look to me like he was a weakness, like he was slowing this team down to me at all. I think he was able to fill in very well.
I think Hayzer's an SML level player. I mean, just by himself. And is he good enough to play on a team like OutCold? Maybe that would require a bigger sample size. But this game he played great. I mean, he had more player damage than anyone on Simplicity, save maniaKK. So he did pretty well. Naja support's really good, don't get me wrong, but Hayzer played that game pretty well.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look then at the standings after our very first day where everyone is shaken up. Already up at the top is OutCold as well as Flashpoint, who we saw both of them looking good earlier on today. Simplicity, I think nothing to hang your head about dropping to OutCold. Likely most people will. Queso, on the other hand, they've got some adjustments to make. I think that game 1 maybe was encouraging, but after that, it was some struggles.
Queso definitely showed signs of life. We'll see how well they can adjust moving forward and how much progress they can make in the months to come.
They're going to need to make some progress here if they want to try and improve this. I know they've been doing some work up until now, but they're going to show us some work here actually on the page, on the paper, too, to try and improve. Because SML EU, I think, is going to be really stacked. I don't think there's a team you can sleep up against. I don't think there's any weak links there. And I don't just mean teams. I mean, like, all of these players. There's 20 players in EU SML. And I don't know who you would say is the weak link there. There's no one to exploit.
I agree. I think EU has a much stronger SML scene as a whole. I think the top end of NA looks really strong, and I think we'll get a chance to see that in the next set. But overall, as a region, I think EU SML has 4 legitimately good teams top to bottom.
I agree with you 100%. Well, it should be the NA SML next. Armada versus Sanguine. I know y'all want to see some Baskin, so that should be coming up shortly. Give us a quick break. We'll get everything ready and be right back with you with more SML.